I am Kanishk Agarwal and I am back with my YouTube channel. Since you all know that our final exams are coming, so I am going to make you revise the chapters that are coming in our final exams. So today we are starting off with social science. Social science is one of the most important subject in our final exams, and the paper would be of 80 marks. So we will going to understand one of the main chapters, chapter number 13 of our book Footprints, History of South Africa, Apartheid and After. So this chapter makes you understand about the history of South Africa, how they face the struggles of apartheid and how they overcome those challenges by decades and decades, and now how they are an equal country which gives equal opportunities to both the races and is now a democratic country. So we are going to understand this in today's class. So let's start it. So first we have a brief summary of the chapter has been given on the first page, 193. It tells about the Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was the first black president of South Africa who come into the power in 1994. He was the first black president and he fight a lot against apartheid. His struggles lead him to in the jails for around 27 years of prison. So that's terrific. But his efforts then paved the way for a democratic South Africa, and in 2023, 2 years back, he got the Nobel Peace Prize, which he shared with the South Africa's last National Party's leader or president, F.W. de Klerk, the last apartheid president, because he helped him to make the end of apartheid regime. So let's start our chapter. The National Party in South Africa legalized apartheid when it came to power in 1948. So see what happens is, in 1948, the National Party of the country South Africa comes into the power. It was an apartheid based party which believes in the idea of separation between the black people and the white people on the basis of social, political and economic and administrative skills and the work culture. So these government what they did, they passed the many laws, made many rules so that the black people can be separated from the white people and they can be considered inferior to that superior whites. These both were separated very hardly, and such that there was nothing between these two peoples. So this comes to the idea of apartheid. Apartheid literally means being apart or apartness. In this, the blacks and whites can be separated as far as possible. So what they done is that they gave all the administrative political skills to the white persons, and they left the blacks at a very bottom level, which made them go in the past of 1,000 years. So but they were left. Okay, so what happened is, whites were started considered inferior and many laws started passing. Also, the white this idea of apartheid says that the white tribe of Afrikaners are the people who lived in the South Africa for a long time, but their origin is from Europe. So they came to there because some of the British rule existed, Portuguese and then British rule existed in the South Africa before 1948. But in 1948, National Party came into the power, and now they started making laws. So we have understood that what is apartheid. It is a idea of separating the whites from blacks and giving more powers to the whites. Okay, so now we will study how did the apartheid government tried to make them separate. So first thing is that they done by making many laws. So immediately after coming to the power in 1948, they started making many laws. First came in the 1949. So you see in 1 year, a new law comes which can separate both, and this was the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act. It means that the black people cannot marry with the whites, and neither the whites can marry the blacks. This made this process of marriage between blacks and whites illegal, completely banned. If someone does, then he must be in the prison for many years even. Second rule is 1950. This rule was passed in 1950, and the rule was Population Registration Act. So now the government said that all the population of South Africa must be classified as blacks or native people, Europeans, Indians, and colored. Colored are the people who have both races mixed with the black and white texture. So mainly in India we see mixed colored races more, which have a texture of black and white. But in Europe we have white more. The texture and race of the people living there is white. And in the deep Africa, very deep, when you go towards the end areas of South Africa, then you can see the the absolute black race over there. So they passed 1950s Population Registration Act. They need to classify all people on basis of these races. Then they passed 1950s Group Areas Act. This act says that out of the whole country, some area, not some, but the most areas which are have priority, which areas are the premium locations of the country, shall be given to the whites. So only whites can live there. They can set up their businesses over there. They can make their schools, and their all the society they can establish there must be of whites only. And the blacks were sent to the remote areas, which are just very far from the main premium locations. This made them they were asked to vacate those areas where the premium location. So for example, let's take there is a city which is the premium, one of the most premium cities, like Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and whites were blacks and whites both were living there. But now the government says that only whites can live here and blacks need to vacate. So they need to immediately left that city and should go to a remote area where the government has sent them. Then 1951 Separate Representation of Voters Act come. This said, see, in past 1910 some blacks were given the voting rights, but now it was completely abolished. So no black people can vote, and no means no. Then 1952's Natives Abolition of Passes and Coordination of Documents Act came. This says that all the previous documents which blacks and whites have, they will be abolished, and only now a new identity book, that is Dom Pass. Remember this name, this is very important for the whole syllabus. Dom Pass will be given to the black people, and they need to carry with them wherever they go throughout the country. So if they were found without this pass, then they could be arrested or can be prison for many years. Then we have the Reservation of Separate Amenities Act. So now what happened is that government said that amenities, what are the basic amenities like trains, transports, subways, shops, hospitals, education, which are set up by the government in the country to ensure its welfare. So what government said that these amenities will be for the whites only, and there will be only some of the seats reserved for blacks, and they need to be in that area also only. So for example, we all go to the restaurants. So if the whites go to the restaurant, they are allowed, but if black people who belongs from the black race is completely banned from that restaurant. So this ensures discrimination in the country, that only whites are allowed but blacks are not allowed, and blacks have special trains for them or special buses for them which are of very bad quality. Okay, so like the trains which for the white people is reaching a certain destination very fast, but the train for the black will take 2 times of the time. Okay, and it is same for the post office, banks, beaches, everywhere. These blacks and whites are separated, and whites get best quality and blacks gets very bad quality of amenities. Now on page 198 there is a visual gallery, so you can see how discrimination was done. A story of a person is given who was asked to vacate the area. So you can see from here. Now we came to the resistance. So what happened when the government started making these laws? The people found it very difficult for them to live in such type of apartheid society. So what they started is they started protesting against the government. They started resistance against the government, and it started in 1950. So in 1948 the government came. 1949 they passed laws, and in 1950s resistance started. This time the ANC, African National Congress, started the resistance. Means the fight against the. In 1952, the African National Congress and the South African Indian Congress and Africans People Organization launched Defiance Campaign. What is a Defiance Campaign? So this campaign says that the people who have joined this campaign would break unlimited of laws. All the laws that are possible for them to break, they will break it. So government will arrest them. But if such a large number of people would be arrested, that government cannot cope with them. So they need to take down these laws. What is the theory behind this campaign was? And government do that. Government started filling the people into the jails. Around 8,000 people were arrested during the whole Defiance campaign. And the offences were just like riding white only trains or visiting places which are reserved for whites. So government done this. And now the people start the Defiance campaign. The ANC thought that the government will take down the laws, but it was not the case. The government starting retaliated by introducing even more laws on these black protesters, and they started making more strict laws. So one thing is common, that ANC, African National Congress, was a anti-race organization. It does not believe at idea of any race. So both the races of black and white are allowed to join this organization, and they worked together. Now government can arrest people without reason. They can they censored all the newspapers, which means they cannot write something which is politically dangerous for the government. And colored people are banned, and colored people can be banned. So sometimes what they did, that colored people were banned from a particular city, so they can't even enter. So for all the Defiance campaign was failed, but in 1956, 9th August 1956, around 20,000 women gathered at Pretoria Hall. They gathered why? Because government wanted to make separate passes for women, and they don't wanted these passes, separate passes, which means they would be treated more poorly than the black men's. So government wanted to do that, but these women protested against them at Pretoria Union Building, and they wanted to file a petition against the president J.G. Stigstrom, but he didn't listen to them at all. Now we move to 1960s. What happened in 1960s is, by the end of 1950s, what people of ANC, the members of ANC, thought that ANC was a non-racial organization. It does not believe at idea of black and white. But some people started thought that fight against apartheid would be only a black fight. Only black people should fight against them. So they left ANC and made a new organization, PAC, because they were angry with the ANC. PAC, or Pan African Congress, was a party which believes in the idea that only blacks should fight against the apartheid regime. Okay, and this PAC was violent. Their actions was violent, but they also launched some campaigns. So in 1960s, they launched a campaign against the laws, against the past laws of Dom Pass. Okay, ANC also launched a campaign. But what happened on 21st March? Some of the protesters of PSC were protesting in front of a police station. So what police did? They opened fire on those people, and 69 got dead and 100 got injured. So this was known as Sharpeville Massacre. It happened in Sharpeville, a city of South Africa. So it was heinous crime. So what the people started retaliating very fast, because it was a very bad incident, killing 69, open fire on the citizens of a country. So they started making armies. These armies were formed by discussions between ANC and the PSC, because both organizations at this point feels that what government done is not good, and now they should change their mode of protest. Now before this they were both were protesting non-violently, but now they decided to fight violently with forming armies. So ANC formed Umkhonto V Sizwe, or the Spear of the Nation. This was the name of that army. This maybe come in the exam, so you need to learn. And second is, the PSC formed POCO, or Standing Alone. This was the name of the army formed by PSC. The army of ANC started attacking the government buildings and the railway lines and pipelines, whereas the army of POCO or the PSC started assassinating chiefs and the government officials who were in support of apartheid government. Also farmers were killed who were in support of apartheid government. But government cannot see this all. So government started arresting thousands of people of these armies and these associations, and made both of the organizations they banned both of the organizations, PSC and ANC, who were protesting against this mainly of this apartheid government violently. And now many of the leaders were sent off to the jails. And remember, this all was happening in 1960s, and Nelson Mandela also got to the jail in during this time only. And so when the government started making all the leaders inside the jail, and all the organizations were banned, so this resistance, this fight against the apartheid get weakened by the end of 1960s. However, in 1970s, they got a new power. This resistance get a new power, a new spirit they got, with this time students leading from the front. So we now see mass democratic movements of the 1970s. What happens is, because as I told you earlier, all the leaders were in the jail by the time of 1960s. So in 1970s, the students came ahead, because there is no fight between the apartheid government and their you can say the people who are opposing it, because all the leaders are in the jail, or got exiled from the outside of the country. So students came and made a new organization, South African Students Organization, SASO, in 1968, which was inspired by the Black Conscious Movement. Black Conscious Movement, it will come in further classes also, or BCM said that the blacks and whites, the black people should first realize their importance. They should be proud of what they are and should understand that they are equal to the whites before demanding rights against them. So is it clear? Because this is very important. Blacks should understand first their importance, and then they can only fight. Okay, so this was the idea behind the BCM. So the students started protesting, but something very uncommon happened then. In 1976, the government said that some of the subjects the student needs to learn in Afrikaans. They will study in Afrikaans. And Afrikaans is a third language for most of them. It's like that you are studying maths and science in French and German and Sanskrit. So you can't study them in these languages because you don't know the even basics of these languages. So those students felt that they would perform very bad in their academics, and that's why they started protesting against the government idea to make them study some of their languages, some of their subjects in Afrikaans language. And this protest against government by the students is known as the Sweater uprisings. Okay, now in 1980s, this time, see, as the decade is changing, the people who are leading the resistance is changing. So it is need to be understand that in which decade which organization is leaded. So in 1950s, ANC leaded. In 1960s, PAC leaded. In 1970s, the SASO or the students leaded. And now in 1980, our organization United Democratic Front, UDF, leaded. It was a non-racial organization that believes in the idea of that there is no race, all are equal, and they united more than 400 anti-apartheid organizations with around 1.5 million people, 15 lakhs as members. The UDF asked the people to boycott elections, to refuse to pay rent to those town councillors who were in support of apartheid government, and hold school protest for demanding better education rights for the blacks, mixed and colored people and Indian peoples. Okay, trade unions also played a very crucial role. With more of the organization has been banned, they started taking the initiative and fighted against the apartheid. Now, so all the protests were starting in the country, and by the end of 1980s, the government started very difficult for them to continue and justify the policy of apartheid. The government feels that such kind of protest cannot be handled now by them. They were handling by last 40 years, but now they are not able to handle. And that's why when in 1989, F.W. de Klerk replaced P.W. Botha as the leader of the National Party, he came. The F.W. de Klerk started changing all the policies. They now wanted to end the apartheid regime and set up a democratic Africa, because it's sometimes the students get confused in that. It is the reason that lot of protest was happening, and when lot of protest is happening, you can't govern a country with lot of protest. So that's why they wish to end now apartheid and set up a democratic elections. So in 2 February 1990, they unbanned all the PAC and Communist Party, and all the leaders were released, including Nelson Mandela. And now, when Mandela was released, the anti-apartheid organizations and the government of National Party started negotiating on how a country of future will look, and that is known as Convention for Democratic South Africa, CODESA. It takes place in the start of 1990s, and in this, the anti-apartheid organization and government started talking with each other about how a new South Africa they can create. Although this was a peaceful talks, but the time in the country was not peaceful. Many violent protests was happening, violence was happening throughout the country, and it was very difficult. The talks broke down many times, but finally in 1994 they agreed that a democratic elections need to be happened and a government of unity needs to be established. And eventually they decided the date of the first South African elections. And this happened on 27 April 1994. 20 million South Africans voted in South Africa's first democratic elections. ANC voted and ANC won the elections with more than 62% of votes. It was a big victory for them. And as it was decided before, a government of national unity needs to be established. So with ANC in the charge, and other parties also get some representation in the new government. Now, since the new government is formed, but it is not easy for them to manage the country because millions were unemployed due to this racial discrimination. The number of AIDS victims, it was a serious disease that was preventing the whole country. It was growing, and many people still do not have access to education, and the year of racism cannot be end in just a second, because the seeds were of this segregation was sown long before. In 15th century, Portuguese made the system of racial discrimination. So it is very difficult to end, and not just in a one night. So it was difficult for the government to make the real apartheid end now. So they started making a sense of unity between the people by 1994. Some of the sporting events happened that made the whites and blacks closer, because the sport events that in the teams black and white played with together, and when they play together, create a sense of cooperativeness gets established. So in 1994, South Africa has a new flag and school and their national anthem. In 2000, a new coat of arms was established and symbolized the national unity. And the South Africa's constitution was also established in 1996. Then Springbok victory of 1995 of Rugby World Cup and Bafana's victory in 1996 African Cup were the two big sporting events that made South Africa more towards a more equal path for both races. So this all happened in between lot of struggles, and Nelson Mandela was one of the best leaders that make this whole happened. Okay, so I've discussed the whole chapter with you. It was like a quick revision, and now more videos will come on the next chapters. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for your support. I hope that you will like this video and our series. So let's meet in the next video. For then, take pains, be perfect, ADU.